Now, Executive Suite with WPRI.com reporter Ted Nesi.
Welcome to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nesi. Later on the show, we're going to hear about Premama, a startup in Providence. It's created a vitamin drink mix for expectant mothers, an interesting new approach on that. But first, I want to welcome Scott Gibbs. He is a longtime fixture in economic development circles in Rhode Island, and he's the president of the nonprofit Economic Development Foundation of Rhode Island. Good long name to have to spit out there. Thanks for being here, Scott.
Thank you, Ted. Thanks for having me.
Let's start by making clear what you are not. The Economic Development Foundation is not the EDC, the 38
correct.
Studios agency. It's not even part of government. What is the Economic Development Foundation?
We're a little bit unique in New England. We're a private company, but we're not for profit economic development organization, but we adopt primarily a real estate strategy. So we really deal with a fixed asset side of business investment.
So people might know you best. EDF, which is the acronym for your organization, owns and operates 400 acres, the Highland Industrial Parks, which straddle Woonsocket and Cumberland. You're a northern Rhode Island guy. How much of the park is occupied? You know, with having gone through the recession?
We've really only got 2 sites left, about 6 acres.
Really? So
yeah.
it's. What did you see during the downturn? Was it tough to keep people in, or?
We've never had a vacancy issue in our park. We did see a significant slowdown, but we were able to weather that primarily because CVS was growing, although the economy was in a slowdown.
And CVS is one of the big reasons you're here today. CVS has 1 million square feet in Highland Park, and you're pretty connected with the company. You talk to them. They're the monolith up there in northern Rhode Island. You've been outspoken against a proposal by Governor Chafee to lower the corporate tax rate in Rhode Island from 9% to 7% because he'd pay for it by scaling back a tax break worth somewhere in the $15 million range to CVS. What are your concerns with that?
Well, I think the important distinction to make first and foremost is we certainly are not opposed to the state's efforts to lower the corporate tax rate. Our biggest concern, however, was that CVS had earned a tax credit because they created 950 jobs under the Job Development Tax Act. But in spite of the fact that the company had earned that credit, and it was based on that credit that they made investment decisions, the budget in effect cut that credit in half. So that in effect worked very much against the trust and the relationship between CVS and the state.
And you've said you actually have seen direct evidence of this because you were talking with CVS about a potential expansion. I mean, the company, CVS, continues to grow by leaps and bounds. It is, people should know, the biggest private corporation in Rhode Island at this point by a significant margin. Tell us about those talks and what happened when the budget came out.
Well, I mean, we've worked with the company now for 40 years. And our relationship has always been very confidential and quiet, and that's the way the company prefers it. However, what we noticed was an immediate chilling effect when the budget came out on CVS's willingness to discuss their expansion plans and make commitments. That disturbed us greatly, and that is why we decided to become more vocal. We were very privy to several options that they were looking at, and those options just basically went cold. And the comment was made, you know, we have got to now reassess our location options for these investments because we have regional centers throughout the country. So now we have to look at those other options as to whether or not they offer a better location than Rhode Island.
Sounds a little like blackmail maybe to some people at home.
It's not blackmail in large part because that's just the real world. When you have companies the size of CVS, every decision they make, first of all, in a digital world, you don't have to all be located under one roof. You can get located all over the world. So every state has to work very hard to make sure that they're competitive to attract those kinds of investments. So as a publicly traded company, CVS has a fiduciary responsibility to their investors or stockholders. So they have to reopen those conversations and options and look at where else they can put it to maximize, you know, the equity for their stockholders.
You mentioned regional centers. I know CVS, I think, has a significant presence in Nashville now, down in that part of the country. Do you think it's possible the company could begin to shift a significant amount of its growth out of its Woonsocket hub here?
Well, they have facilities, large facilities in Texas. They have it in Arizona. They have it in Pennsylvania, as you said, Tennessee, Illinois. They're building a new facility in New Jersey right now. No one can foresee the future. All I can say is that the erosion of trust and relationship could certainly shift the company's future growth out of Rhode Island to other locales.
One person who's actually pushed back at this idea a little bit, someone you know well, Gary Sass, who served in the Kuchera administration, former head of RIPEC. He's been on our show before. He's argued the governor's taking the right approach because he's reducing a tax break that helps a select few businesses, primarily CVS, to bring the broader rate down for everybody. Isn't that only fair?
I think it is a good strategic decision to lower the corporate tax rate, especially when you have the highest corporate tax rate in New England. But I don't think you do that at the expense of breaking a relationship and breaking a deal with a fundamental, foundational company to the state's economy. That investment was made based on goodwill, was based on representations, and when you change that, it completely erodes the trust. And in fact, I was participated in a business roundtable discussion a week ago with some of the leadership on the House side, and one of the key themes that kept being said by the business leadership was that the lack of predictability, the lack of consistency is a fundamental problem that erodes the business climate in Rhode Island.
Because it shifts in the budget year to year.
Yes.
Now, speaking of the House, you must then be somewhat pleased to see that House Finance Committee released their budget. Probably the budget will become law, but by the time we tape the next show, perhaps. And this proposal is not in there. Do you think that was the right decision?
I think that the Speaker and Representative Mello demonstrated considerable leadership in understanding the ramifications of that decision. It was not an easy decision, I'm sure. They're dealing with very significant budgetary constraints in Rhode Island. But it is, without a question, the right decision. But I think it's only the beginning of going back and trying to repair, I think, a relationship issue that we have with one of our core businesses in the state.
Do you think there's actually been longer-term damage than just that isn't just fixed by not including this in the budget?
I always tell my kids that trust is very hard to earn, but it's very easy to lose. I think that trust, I think there is an issue now. I think we have to work very hard to mend that.
Interesting. All right, we're going to stick with Scott Gibbs, but we have to take a break for now. We're going to talk more about what Rhode Island can do to improve its economic development situation. Stick with us on Executive Suite. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nisi. Later on in the show, we're going to hear about Premama, a vitamin drink mix for expectant moms that's starting to take off here in Rhode Island. But first, I'm glad to be joined by Scott Gibbs, a veteran economic development guy here in Rhode Island, in northern Rhode Island, all the way back to, I think, to the 80s you've been doing this,
84.
Right? 84, year I was born.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
So you have a unique perspective then, because you've seen the Greenhouse Compact debate, Rob Atkinson's efforts in the 1990s, the latest debate now after the recession. You know, when you look at Rhode Island and you look at the years we've gone through, what do you think, what would you like to see happening on Smith Hill or maybe off Smith Hill that could really make an impact on the state's business climate and hopefully ramp up job growth and sort of get the economy out of the doldrums here?
Well, I'm a little bit unusual because I'm not a pessimist, although maybe I have good reasons to be. But I have to be very optimistic because what I've seen in the past 12 months is probably more intelligence and leadership coming out of the legislature than I've ever seen as it relates to economic development. I really do believe the leadership in both the Senate and the House really understand that Rhode Island is in a very, very difficult situation, and they've got to get their act together as it relates to the state's business climate. That's
going to stun people at home who are used to always hearing people dump on the General Assembly.
Yeah.
I mean, did they wait too long, perhaps, to get the message? It is.
Well, did we all wait too long? I mean, I've always argued that the problem that Rhode Island's facing right now is just not a problem of political leadership. It's a problem of corporate leadership. It's a problem throughout the state. We have got to stop working in a divisive way in our respective silos, and we've got to start coming together to really put together an economic development focus and make it happen. Up until now, that really has not been, I think, the culture in the state.
So you see a coming together in a way that you haven't seen in the past decades?
I see early warnings of it, early indicators of it. We are nowhere near that, but I see the walls starting to come down a little bit. Our organization, for example, has reached out very closely with the Greater Providence Chamber of Commerce and Lori White, saying how can we work together to help promote a better brand for Rhode Island outside of Rhode Island, because we're allowing the media to brand Rhode Island. And we, therefore, are suffering because of reasons that we've earned. So I think you're starting to see that kind of reaching out among a lot of organizations saying, how can we work together to solve the state's problems.
There, you mentioned the House and Senate leaders. I think I counted like 43 bills between the two chambers, different sets of economic development legislation. Still unclear which will become law. Some of it's in the budget. Other things are still, tied up. But of those many proposals, are there particular ones that you think really show promise, or that you think could really make a difference?
Well, I think the fact that the House chose to leave the job development tax credit alone, I think, was an important step.
That's a credit we were talking about with CVS
correct.
In the first half.
Unfortunately, because of the fiscal constraints, they weren't able to deal with the issue of reducing the corporate income tax, the sales tax reform. But at least it's a step. And steps are very difficult and when you're in extreme fiscal situations. The one issue that's still hanging out there is the issue of the Department of Commerce, which actually was voted out of the House.
Which, for the people at home, that it doesn't exist right now. There's a debate about whether to sort of convert the Economic Development Corporation, that's gotten such negative attention since 38 Studios, into a government department under the Governor, Department of Commerce. Not clear yet whether that'll pass.
And the Department of Commerce is actually not about the EDC, it's about a restructuring of state government. And it's based on good principles, and the ideas coming out of John Simmons and the RIPEC, I understand it. And as Marcel Valla would say, we agree with 95% of what you're talking about, but we really don't believe that restructuring state government is going to solve the problem. It's moving the boxes. It's really about creating a focus, and there are a lot easier ways to do that. It's not in the budget, but they've always argued it's not a budgetary issue. We're kind of hoping that issue does not surface and maybe gets pushed out, and more of a broad discussion about that going forward out of session.
Marcel, someone you've known a long time, he just took over the EDC. He was Governor Chafee's pick, and he got confirmed. Do you think the EDC, as is, with new leadership, maybe can turn the ship around?
I think that Marcel is probably one of the best economic developers I've ever worked with, and he gets it, because he, like I, have been working on the outside of the EDC for years, and we know what the problems are. Marcel is extremely committed to building a different culture in EDC that's more responsive, more customer-driven. Bottom line, to create value in those conversations. I think it was a great appointment by the governor.
Now, we only have about a minute left, but I want to ask, Woonsocket, we're seeing headlines still about the financial situation up there. That's your neck of the woods. You said being on the outside. I know you're on the outside of this. You're not part of these discussions about the budget, but what's the general feeling up there about the city's fiscal situation? People are mentioning bankruptcy now. I mean, what do you see happening, and what are business leaders saying?
I hate to throw fuel on the fire, because I know people are really trying to work through the Budget Commission, but the overall attitude, the environment is really bad. I mean, when you have to go to your lead corporate players and ask them to pay their taxes in advance to make payroll, that's like me borrowing on my credit card to pay off my mortgage this month. It's just, I think they're in dire straits right now, and if I felt there was an economic engine behind this that could help get them out of it, I would say that's great, but I don't see it. And I know the state has worked very hard to keep them out of receivership. I think the overall tone in Woonsocket right now is that I don't know how they stay out of it.
A very, very cautious note there. All right, well, that's all the time we have for this segment. Scott, thank you for being here. When we come back, we're going to hear from the founder of the company making Premama, a vitamin drink startup in Providence. Stick with us on Executive Suite. Welcome back to Executive Suite. I'm Ted Nesi, and I'm joined now by Dan Aziz. He's a Brown University graduate and co-founder and president of Luna Pharmaceuticals in Providence, but you may know them better because they created Premama, which is a vitamin drink mix for expectant mothers. It's a startup. You can see it there on the screen. Dan, welcome to the show.
Oh, thanks for having me.
And can you tell me a little about Premama? I must say, you don't look like you've ever been an expectant mother.
I'm not a Premama, but I do have 3 sisters and a mom, and so I kind of know a lot about the struggles and some of the pains of pregnancy, and although it is an awesome thing, it's not the easiest for a woman to go through, so thankfully us men have it a bit easier.
Lucky us, yeah.
But Premama, basically, we created this. It's a powdered prenatal supplement for pregnant women to be taken before conception, throughout pregnancy, and during breastfeeding.
Okay.
It has nutrients that are clinically proven to reduce the chance of birth defect, and our product especially is a substitute for prenatal pills, which a lot of women actually have problems digesting due to their size and You add the fact that it's called a horse pill and they're nauseous, taking that every day makes it difficult. So what we did with Premama is put those nutrients that are in the prenatal pills, as well as some prescription grade ingredients that you cannot find in any other over-the-counter supplement, that are clinically proven to soothe the symptoms of morning sickness, clinically proven to be non-constipating, and all vegetarian and the highest grade absorption that you would get from any supplement, and put it into two actually, easy to take, one a day, kind of sachets, if you will. It's kind of like a Crystal Light that's all natural for pregnant women. So
you put it into maybe a drink,
water,
or a cereal or something?
Exactly. So we have two products. The Essentials is flavorless. That's because a lot of women, their taste buds change during pregnancy. So if they didn't like our kind of smooth tangerine flavor that the Plus is, the Essentials is your product then. And you can mix that into a soft food, oatmeal, yogurt. You can even bake it into a cookie or a cake, but often it goes into a juice, a breakfast smoothie. Some do put it in water as well, but it's very versatile, so it can really go into whatever a woman wants to consume, and that won't upset her stomach or upset her nausea. So it's the easiest, most horrible way to get the nutrients you and your baby need on a day-to-day basis. The Plus, it's flavored. It has 165 milligrams of omega fats, including DHA and ALA. So if you didn't flavor that, it'd be pretty fishy, and we definitely don't want women to have a bad taste experience. So we gave this a nice smooth citrus flavor. It's 0 calorie, naturally flavored, sweetened with stevia, and you mix that just 1 pack a day into a 16-ounce bottle of water, shake it up and drink it.
Now, a lot of us have mothers and sisters, but
Yes.
What would make a guy, you were on the crew team at Brown, you're from Canada originally,
Yes.
I know, what would make a guy think, I'm going to make something special for women to drink
Definitely,
to get their nutrients? What got this idea in your head?
It's probably the most common question I get. So actually, my co-founder and I, Will, we both were very passionate about nutrition, and we met each other while at Brown in a business class, and we were kind of partnered up talking about, well, what can we solve? What kind of issues are there out there? And we did have the echoings of our mothers in the back of our head complaining about, well, you don't know what it was like to make you. I brought you into this world, And we were just thinking, well, let's go out and let's talk to some women. Women seem to know a lot about everything. Moms are the backbone, so what can we learn from them? And while at a Whole Foods, a pregnant woman came up to us and said, I wish there was something besides these prenatal pills. And as two 20-something-year-olds, and you're right, not pre-mamas, we were like, I don't know what those are, but I'll look into it. So we interviewed another 300 pregnant women, and they all said the same thing. I hate the pill. My doctor says I have to take it. Makes me sick. It gets stuck in my throat. I get nasty fish burps after. I don't even take it. So there were all these things we were getting feedback on, and we're like, wow, this is something that every woman should take every day that she's pregnant, and ideally 3 months before she even conceives. But they can't even take these pills because they're so big and so hard to consume. Like, there must be something out there. And we started digging into it, and there were a couple companies that were starting to do something, but really no one was solving the problem of the nausea, the constipation, and delivering a unique method that is not a pill. Part of the reason is it's really hard to mask all those nutrients and make it taste good.
Well, I was going to ask, how did you guys end up, how'd you figure out how to make this?
Yeah, so what we did is we surrounded ourselves by people smarter than us. So we found, we brought on some high-risk OBGYNs from the West Coast. We work closely with Brown and Women and Infants Obstetrics Department. We also work with some OBs from the Norwalk Hospital, and also some professors in obstetrics at Yale University. So we had a lot of smart doctors around us, as well as pharmacists, and they helped us put together what should go in it, what the issues are, and how we can solve that with different nutrients. And from there to actually getting it developed, we brought on some natural food experts, people who've been through the road before, created products, sold them in the natural food channels. I mean, this right now is available at Whole Foods. We sell in a lot of natural mom and pop stores as well, so that's kind of...
I think Amazon.com
Amazon
too?
As well. We sell on Amazon. Should be expanding into a couple more .com soon, and our website currently sells these products, but in a backwards way. The new website launches in a week, so we'll have all this ready and easy to buy.
People getting a preview on executive.
Exactly.
How much are you asking for it? How much does it go for?
So the Essentials is $32.99, so just about $1 a day, and the Plus, because it is more expensive, is about $42.99. That said, I know at Whole Foods you'll get it cheaper. We like to sell it at the highest so that hopefully you guys can go into the store and...
Spoken like a smart businessman.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about what made you decide to stay in Rhode Island. And as I mentioned, you're from Canada, came here for school, but you and William Doe are staying here to try to build this business. What made you decide to do that?
Yeah, Will's from San Fran, so neither of us are here. Neither have any family here, but I'm in love with Rhode Island. Coming here, I had no idea what to expect. But I'm a big foodie, and I think the food's fantastic. Business-wise, it's very, very comfortable for an entrepreneur to live here. I mean, we're not paying ourselves crazy salaries. Will and I both turned down the high salary banking life for this pursuit to try and bring some joy and happiness to pregnant women and also make a difference. And our rent is very, very inexpensive to be downtown. The rent for housing is very inexpensive. So it's a place where a young person can definitely live well and not need the largest salary. So that plus its location, I think, can't be beat. I mean, you're 30 minutes to Boston if you want a bigger city feel, but Providence basically has everything you do need. You're 20 minutes to the beach if you're ready for a day off. Go up to Vermont if you want to go skiing. Everything is within a weekend away here, so I think that's
it's a good place to be.
It's a great place.
So, when you're looking at this, you've had to raise money. How's that gone in terms of being able to tap into the resources you need to build a company?
Sure. So we've done some work with Bryant University. We've done some work with the EDC, with Brown University as well. Our rent is actually still subsidized by the Rhode Island Center of Innovation and Entrepreneurship, even though it's kind of being rebuilt and rebranded right now.
Yeah.
It's kind of disappeared, but they're still paying part of our rent, so I'll take it.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of help. There's a lot of there's actually a large entrepreneurial community around here, so it's a great network.
Though much of it's tech focused.
It is very tech focused. It's actually very tough to find anyone who's consumer goods at the startup phase, in the angel groups in particular. Usually that's private equity and venture capital. There's a lot of actually interesting articles in the Times recently about bets on food-based companies. But it is the first couple investments are tougher to get. So we originally tapped into our network in Canada for our first angel round of $250,000, and we're in the midst of $1 million round right now. I am actually in conversations with Ocean State Angels, which is a Rhode Island-based angel company.
Had them on the show, actually.
Oh yeah, great, awesome. Yeah, there are a lot of great mentors here for me. Steve Lane from Zymedica is one of them. Danny Warshay, he's involved in almost every business in Rhode Island. He was my professor at Brown as well. So there's a lot of help here, a lot of smart people, and one thing that we can do too is we do outsource a number of our day-to-day, but interns, there's 6 universities in Providence alone that you can kind of tap, or the Providence area that you can tap into. There's a lot of brain power here, RISD, Brown, JWU, that you can really, Providence College. So it makes it pretty affordable to actually bring in some help that otherwise could earn a lot more elsewhere if they were working in New York or something along those lines.
So if we have any expectant moms watching the show, maybe with a little morning sickness, try Premama. You can get it on Amazon and at Whole Foods. Dan, thanks for being here. I also want to thank Scott Gibbs from the Economic Development Foundation of Rhode Island. He was here for the first half of the show. If you missed any of this or any other episode of Executive Suite, you can catch it all on our website, WPRI.com. I'll see you next week on Executive Suite.